is love particularly. We have talked a lot about transatlantic relations. We touched a little bit on global governance and we talked a little bit about China. But certainly this is very, very, so to say in Germany, could also say Nabelschau. So we are a lot of times very busy with ourselves. And obviously, for all global issues the big challenges, but also the big opportunities, the transatlantic relationship doesn't make the cut, right? My team and I said we really want, again, to bring in the emerging economies, the middle income groups, what is often framed as the global south, although that is a controversial phrasing I'm very aware of. But we want to talk about this not just in the transatlantic relationship, but in a broader sense. So we are entering one of my favorite segments of the conference, and that also wouldn't have been possible without the strong support of the Friedrich Naumann Foundation. So Sascha, come on upstairs, join me, and give Sascha Tam a big applause.
Hello, welcome.
And you are the head of the Transatlantic Dialogue and Latin America Division, and you have been doing that for a little while.
Yeah, 7-8 years, something.
7-8 years. 7-8 years. Yeah. And you still like it?
I still like it. Yeah, I still like it. It's even becoming more interesting, especially the transatlantic part.
Yeah, it's becoming more interesting. Yeah. In what sense?
You know, you have to write reports about new developments every day, not every month, when we looking at the United States, for example. Yeah. Yeah. It becomes more impressive, more interesting, more volatile, everything.
Are there things which surprised you over the last few months? Or did you predict almost everything?
No. And I don't know any person who predicted everything. What happened under the new presidency in the United States and what happened everywhere around them and all the developments. Some things have been predictable, but not all. I think, yeah.
And the Naumann Foundation has a pretty strong foothold in the United States.
Yes, Washington. We have a Washington office, and we also deal with global issues from our Washington office. We call this an expertise hub for cooperation with the global institutions like IMF, World Bank, and so on, WTO. And we cooperate with them in Washington, out of our Washington office.
And how do your colleagues in Washington feel right now?
You have to ask themselves. Yeah. They probably they do not report to me everything properly, but it's also very challenging for them. They write also articles, give interviews, everything, and then they try to build new partnerships as well, because it's also interesting what happens in the Congress everywhere. We try to find new contexts and try to understand, make sense of everything what happens. That's what they do, and that's challenging, absolutely, yeah.
Well, thank you. Now, sorry, one last question. What do you want to get out of the panel?
I want to get out of the panel a sense of what can be done that we think more globally, not in our transatlantic bubble, but in the world bubble, which is somehow a bubble, that we can cooperate with all our partners much better. And the first thing is to listen and to understand what their interests are, and then to offer proposals and get their proposals, what can be done to improve cooperation.
So we know our job. And with this, I hand over to you, and I'm looking forward to the panel.
Thank you very much. I think all panelists, please come to the stage right now, and I will introduce when you are seated.
Wow.
Everything is? Yeah, okay. Ambassador will come here. So, I'll start with you. Enough seats? Yes. Enough chairs? Everything is good. So, I will do a very, very brief introductory round. You can read everything in your conference papers, but I will do anyway, very brief. To my right, Excellency Ambassador Yadier Salazar Mejia. We are very happy that you are with us, the Ambassador of Colombia in Germany, and she has a lot of experience in global and international institutions. You worked for your country in many contexts. We can read it here, and we will get your experience later in your statement. Thank you for being with us. Next, Chris Monteiro from Brazil. She has a long, distinguished career in private business in a lot of global companies, organizations, and now she's a politician.
Yes.
In Sao Paulo, in the Parliament of Sao Paulo, it sounds like a municipal thing, but Sao Paulo has a population much bigger than many European countries. Therefore, it is, yeah, than most of the European countries, I think. Next one, Sami Nada from Lebanon, from Beirut, professor, director of the Institute of Political Sciences, and as we got to know over the last 2 days already, an interview partner for almost everyone in Lebanon and here in analyzing the developments in his region, in the Levante, in the Mediterranean, and so on, which, as everyone in here knows, is a very interesting and volatile region now. Thank you for being with us. Next, Aira Ajari. She is CEO. Here is it written rightly, CEO. In the bigger text, it's acting CEO, but she's not acting anymore. She's now the real CEO of IDEA, the Institute for Democracy and Economic Affairs in Malaysia, an expert for the whole space. And this is the most influential think tank, one might say, in Malaysia for public policy. And she's the director of it. Thank you for making this very, very long trip. By the way, Aira was on Doha Airport 2 hours before it has been closed on Monday. We are therefore even more happy that you are here with us. And then Christoph Seemann, head of the Division for International Economic and Financial Policy in the German Foreign Office, who will share his perspectives, or in your position, Germany's perspective on global dialogue regarding trade, tech, and cooperation. Thank you for being with us as well. So I would like to start, I think we go in this order with brief introductory questions, and then we will open the floor and come into some dialogue. Ambassador, Excellency, what should be done to build a more mutually beneficial relationship? What should be done between South and East? I also don't like those terms, but somehow they work. You are from South America at least. And what should be done to build a more beneficial relationship from Europe and the transatlantic sphere, and also from your own countries or from your continent, put it this way, please.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and I'm very, very honored to be here in this panel with all of you, particularly, of course, a woman and South America. I feel very blessed as well to be here with you and with all of you. I have been discussing this question with Stormy Milner for a couple of times, and there's always not a perfect answer, but we consider that transatlantic relations to improve cooperation should include Latin America and the Caribbean countries. We are speaking about 670 million people, and if you add the 65 to 70 million Latinos in the US, and plus the 450 here, so we are speaking about a number that is important, and behind these numbers is a lot of people from both regions, both Germany and the European Union, and Latin America and the Caribbean countries, 33 countries, with a lot of talent, very, very close ideas of what is democracy, of what is sustainability, and very much engaged in the importance of multilateralism, rules-based order, trade order, and I think this is very crucial for trust. The important thing when you build trust is that, and when you, of course, work in multilateral affairs, is that you need to have a long-term perspective. If I would give this answer for this moment, I don't have to explain myself. what's happening in your region, which we are very concerned and following very much from Colombia. Then, of course, speaking about trust is not in front of young people as well. It's very complicated. But if we look into a long-term perspective, there are probably 5 very concrete points that I would like to bring here to your attention. Number 1, we need really to avoid double standards and disinformation. This is very, very critical. Because trust with double standards is not going to work. And trust with disinformation, this is not possible, not for the Global South, not for the Global North, or the way you want to call it. Number 2, we really need to stick to what we work together with Germany, and I'm very glad that I can meet you today in your new position. We are strengthening my country, Germany, and other countries, it's the case of Brazil as well, for the rules-based order. But it's not about talking, it's about really fighting for a multilateral system as a platform to reduce local inequalities, regional inequalities, and world inequalities. And this trust and this type of setting will bring us back to a world in peace. And Colombia can speak, unfortunately, about war and peace, conflict and peace, and this is something that we really need to think about in a long perspective and really strengthen our efforts, whatever it is, to go back to a rules-based order. Growth and prosperity. Nobody wants, of course, there's no trust without growth and prosperity. I take the example of regions in Colombia that were very much affected by the conflict and hit. Without prosperity, without growth, we couldn't have been able to bring this trust to these communities, and it happens for the whole world. So we need to identify together Germany, Europe, and Latin American and the Caribbean countries and other places in the world, concrete, big, transformative projects in different areas, then digitalization, AI, etc., that are really, we want to commit, we listen to each other, and we want to commit, and we bring those projects to reduce those inequalities, but to grow, because nobody is going to give up what he has. And there is a potential to grow if we look in a sustainable growth, in a green growth, new technologies, new opportunities. Countries like my country, like Brazil, we are the owners, let's say, of a very important part, 20%, 30% of the biodiversity of the Amazonas. There's a lot of room for bioeconomy, for growth, and a different growth approach where we integrate indigenous knowledge and many other things. The 4th thing, it would be that we need really to transition to this idea of foreign aid. This is confusing the populations in the north and in the south as well. I don't like north and south, but I'm going to speak like that, so you know that we make it simple.
Nobody likes it, but we all use it.
But we use it. Okay, and then there are some academicals like you, they are going to bring new ways that we can communicate. But in general, sometimes when I speak here in Germany, I need to explain to the opinion here that Colombia, let's say, take my country, of course, then we are recipients, we are an OECD country, middle income country, etc. Of course, as I speak for middle income countries, we receive cooperation or development cooperation. This is credits. It's 90 to 95% credits that we always pay because we are a country that has a very sound macroeconomic policy. And these are good rates, let's say, but I can find those in the market as well somewhere else. And then the other 5%, it's probably 40 million, 50 million euro, that, let's say, this is not going to make a big difference. But the idea here is, of course, if I would be a German citizen, I'm sleeping in the Tiergarten here in front of you, and I see that, that the money of my taxes are going to a country called Colombia, that is misusing this money. No. So this idea we need to change. We don't want that. We don't want that the people here think that we are living under cost, because this is going to create more more distress in the world. We want to do those projects where we, of course, build together, let's say, technological medicine from Germany, which is, and we transfer that knowledge and we do projects. But this, and the fifth and last one, is that what I was saying, transfer of knowledge, technology, and science in the industry. Our countries are reindustrializing their economies. The case of Brazil is more advanced, of course, than our industries in Colombia, and much bigger. But we are in a process of reindustrialization with sustainability. And then this brings you a big cake for opportunities, for technologies from the north or from Germany. And we have as well knowledge that we can transfer for different environmental situations, for this and that. And we need to connect the policy, industrial policies with in both ecosystems. And there's a lot, and recognizing asymmetries, because of course we cannot sit at the table and think that we are going to be, we want to be treated equal, but we want to be treated fair, and we treat others fair. So that would be my contribution.
Thank you very much. We will come back to all those points, I think, in the discussion. Now we switch continents, world regions, and go to Asia, to Malaysia. And we stick with these trust issues. Ira, what can be done from your perspective, from the perspective of Malaysia and the whole region? What should the transatlantic partners or the global north do to build trust in your region? And probably how much do people and decision makers in your country, in your region, trust the West? Please.
Thank you, Sasha. Such an honor to be here today. I think probably the only person from the region throughout the 2 days, right? So I think this question of trust is really interesting, because when we talk about trust, I think we need to unpack that term a bit. Yeah, that's number one. Because what I see in my own country, in Malaysia and in the region, there is an increasing divergence between trust in terms of doing business with the US and Europe, the investments, the economy, trade. That's increasingly, there's a divergence between that and also trust in terms of like the trust that you would have with a partner or a friend. Now that I think has seriously eroded, I would say, over the last few years. Now, maybe I give a bit of explanation to that, right? So in terms of trade, the US and also the EU remains one of Malaysia's top trading partners. Yeah, I can give you all the numbers, but it's in the top 5 of the top trading partners of Malaysia and also of ASEAN. And of course, the tariff announcement during Liberation Day earlier this year, of course, gave a shock to the system. Malaysia was imposed with 24%, and there was a disagreement on how the reciprocal tariffs were calculated. But has that changed our trade relationship? I would say it gave us a shock, but our trade minister, has been to the US, has been to DC a few times already to negotiate with the Americans on these tariffs. And we'll see what happens when the pause is, I don't know, will end soon, because there's a pause at the moment. But in terms of trade, in terms of business, I think despite the current administration in America, I don't think that will change very much. And Malaysia cannot afford for that relationship to change, honestly. But I think there is, in terms of trust, to US especially, I have to say that has seriously changed due to several factors, but I would say that since October 7th, yeah, and what's been the atrocities, frankly, that's been happening in Gaza, has really eroded the reputation of America in Malaysia. And that's a fact, yeah? Will that mean that our government will change their policy or will then, stop doing trade or business with America? No, definitely not. But that mistrust among society and amongst the public, I would say, does have an impact on the relationship. With the EU, I think it's a bit more complicated because the EU is also like not a sort of a hegemony or a behemoth, right? There are different opinions as well within the EU about what's happening in Gaza. So I'd say that trust also needs to be unpacked. And number two, maybe I just want to touch a bit on how do we increase or have a better collaboration. I would say there needs to be an understanding of local context, yeah? Understanding of local context is really important. For each country in ASEAN, there are 10 countries in ASEAN, there are different, we have different colonial histories, which means that our political systems are different, our society is structured in different ways. If it's very clear if you come to the region that Malaysia and Singapore, we have a Westminster parliamentary democracy, and then you go to Indonesia, they have a presidential system, and then you go to the Philippines, and of course you see the Spanish and American influence. So all of this gives rise to different ways of viewing the world and thinking about issues, right? So while the anti-American sentiment might be strong in countries like Malaysia and Indonesia, this might not be a problem in a country like the Philippines, for example. Yeah, and the Philippines, of course, is home to, I think, now 4 US military bases, right? So I think these terms, I think, needs to be unpacked, and understanding of local context and nuances in issues and avoiding of generalizations, I would say. And I think I'll stop there now. I'll probably add later on China as well. Yeah.
Oh yeah, on China.
Okay,
Probably
I'll stop there now.
We have to discuss China
Thank you.
also on this panel. Thank you very much, Ira. And as you mentioned, the region with Gaza and all the regional problems, the regional context, I would go over to Sami, who knows a lot of regional context about Lebanon, about the countries around Lebanon. Yeah, and I would like to ask him how political actors in your region perceive at the moment the Transatlantic alliance, the Americans, but also the Europeans. Do they perceive them as strong, overreaching, or the Europeans as weak? What's the perception in your region?
First of all, thank you for the invitation, and I'm very delighted to be here. I mean, there is no a monolithic perception, but in general, I would say there is this perception of strategic imbalance. This question of double standard had a huge impact on the political level, that humanitarian law, international law are applied when it suits the West, and the divide today is more about, it's no more about North and South, but it's about the West and the rest. And it was clearly manifested during the United Nations General Assembly during the vote pertaining to Gaza. Now, on the global governance level, I would say there is this perception that of uneven partnership, that these countries are objects of the policies and not co-creator. And this needs to be changed, to be the author of their own destiny in a way. And so there is, and always this policy that are pushed by these Western countries are in a crisis management mode. Okay. And there is a fatigue from this crisis management mode. Because a lot of time there are short-sighted and self-centered. Let's take the example of the migration. And there is this sentiment that I'm coming from a country, Lebanon, that of 5 million hosting 2 million Syrian refugees. And there is this sentiment that there is something that needs to be changed in how EU is approaching this refugee crisis. The perception is that Europe is externalizing its borders. I mean, giving money and aid to the Syrian refugees, and while neglecting totally the host countries. And this will backfire, in my view, on, this is counterproductive anyhow. Take, for instance, the question of economic sanctions. I'm in favor of economic sanctions. This is a very powerful tool to combat corruption, to combat terrorism, but it needs to be surgically implemented. I mean, otherwise, those who are, can be the collateral damage are the private sector, or the formal economy, while the objective is to combat the informal economy. Same things about financial assistance, to stick to the IMF program and the World Bank program. And this is, as well, needs to be tailor-made, to be put in, to be contextualized, because, I mean, those who can pay the price of this, for instance, slogan that today is coming, no reforms, no financial aid. I do understand that the problem is, in these countries in particular, corrupt governance, nepotism. So, but you need to channel the assistance to the private sector. There are many creative ways in order to face up to these challenges. And the areas of opportunities are huge.
Yes.
I mean, when it comes to green energy. So more and more we're talking about the MENA region as the green battery of Europe. That's great. This is a huge opportunity for both sides of the Mediterranean. But there is no one platform, one institution that is strategizing, that is long-term strategizing in order to develop, I mean, this renewable energy sector, which is making breakthrough in some countries like Lebanon, like Jordan, like Tunisia. The same thing about AI, about agrotech and food security. So there is, I mean, I will stop here, but the threats are enormous, but as well, the areas of opportunities are unlimited, I mean, no limits.
Thank you very much. Now we jump back from your region to Latin America, but now to Brazil. and I would like to ask Chris Monteiro a more practical question. You know, we've heard about all the general problems on perception and so on. And what do you think, what practical steps? Oh.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
I didn't want to scare you.
Okay, no, everything's good. What practical steps could be done regarding the improvement, the beneficiary improvement of our relations and of our cooperation? You have some ideas what practical steps could be done.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here with all of you, and thank you for the Nauman Foundation for the invitation. This is very, very exciting to be talking to this audience. I guess the one thing that comes to mind when I was studying and preparing for this, there's this deal with Mercosur and the European Union that's been being discussed for over 20 years.
Yeah, almost 30, I think.
Yeah, and it never takes off. So that would be something very practical that would enhance, enlarge the trade activity between, you know, the region and Europe. And I want to give you some example in terms of if the Mercosur agreement takes off, that would be approximately 25% of the global GDP. So this is something quite impressive, in my opinion, and that would account for approximately 780 million people involved in this agreement. And this has been there for quite a long time. I think in 2019 or something, 2020, there has been some sort of progress, but it is still sitting in somebody's desk, and this is not being signed. Just to give you some numbers as well in terms of taking away the Mercosur and talking particularly about Brazil and Germany, the trade between Germany and Brazil was in 2024 was $20 billion. Brazil exported of the 20 billion, 6 billion to Germany, mainly raw goods, minerals, grains. Germany exported to Brazil 14 billions, mainly manufacturers, pharmaceuticals, technology. So that shows very much the type of trading that is happening between, and this is not different. I'm talking about German, but this is across other countries as well. So we are giving the raw material cheaper to some extent and buying the more expensive one. Is this fair trade? Now, some of the regulations for us to increase the kind of trade, they're almost impossible to be complied with. It's impossible that for some of the farmers in Brazil, for instance, to make sure, they probably can make sure, but they cannot certify and testify that the supply chain from the very beginning to the end, complied with the kind of requirements. So it seems to me that this has been done by somebody who doesn't want this to be done, right? How can we progress with that? Can we transfer knowledge? Can we help the farmers, have a transition period, for instance, to comply with?
Yeah.
So this would be something very practical. There's a lot of important local farmers, and it's important to know, and I think most of us, Brazil is dealing with a lot of very difficult infrastructure problems. We need, and we're working on that, we're making progress, but we still, and some of the farmers are working on getting this stuff being done in a better shape so they can prove and comply with the regulations that are being required from us. And again, not only for Brazil, I don't like the global south as well. So I think nobody here likes, right? But we still use it, right? So this would be, the other thing would be funding access. Definitely, and funding access, I would also add bringing the cities to the table. I think a lot happens. We talk about Brazil. Brazil has 5,500 cities across its territory. We need to bring those cities because things happen, life is happening in the city. They know, and I heard from all of you, understanding the culture, understanding the environment, see how we do business. And I guess the previous speaker as well, one of the last questions was like, how can we build confidence and trust? Because for us to do that, we need to know who is on the other side of the table and understanding. And likewise, if this doesn't happen, we are not going to understand how you guys trade, how you guys do business, and the other way around. So this is very practical. Maybe taking a Lufthansa plane and go to to the interior of Maranhão, Rio Grande do Sul, and see what these people are doing. That would help tremendously, right? So I guess I covered most of my topics here in terms of understanding the local context, transfers of knowledge, and to me, very important, I will say it again, in terms of the regulatory requirements, this needs to be discussed deeply. Otherwise, we are not going to get anywhere. We're going to be stuck, and I think there's a lot of good things that Brazil and Latin America and the Global South is doing that needs to be brought up to surface so everybody can benefit of a good trading strategy between, those countries and the transatlantic nation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Seemann, the task is yours to represent the West, Germany, Europe, and everyone. And I would like you a little bit to focus on one of the issues. What can we do to deregulate, probably debureaucratize our thinking about the world? I had to study in many of those trade agreements. They are bureaucratic overkill and nobody can fulfill them. As Chris just mentioned, a farmer or smaller company in Brazil cannot deal with all those issues. Can there be something done in this area?
Well, thank you for giving you this easy task.
But sorry for that.
But
it's your
first,
job.
thank you so much for the invitation on the panel, and I'm really deeply humbled to hear these global perspectives, because indeed I think when we talk about Germany, the EU, and the transatlantic relations, we often focus, or too often focus on ourselves. So I remember So I was already part of the team within the German government, of course, Ministry of Economics in the lead, but as Foreign Office, of course, we were a part of this TTIP team, basically. And it took quite some efforts to make people understand that whatever we do with TTIP will have global implications, and we need to talk to partners who will be affected. And that starts with Turkey in the customs union with the EU and extend to other countries which are interlinked to that. So I just wanted to mention that, because I think what you have said is, I think, really this mesh which we have to face today, that geopolitics and geoeconomics have to be thought together in a more coherent way, because whatever we do in this one area will affect somebody else in the world. We can take EU regulations. From the beginning on of the discussions about the CBAM, we said, look, there will be effects. It's not only a legal WTO question, but even more. Also, the well-thought and intended deforestation regulation has effects which we have to address. And it took a while to address those. And I think the European Commission, together with member states, they made great progress over the years with Malaysia, with Indonesia, with Brazil, with Colombia, talking about the effects of these regulations and understanding that maybe we have to rethink what we believe about the Brussels effect, right? A couple of years back, you would proudly say we have a Brussels effect in the world. I would say now we would say, well, we understand we have to do these regulations together with our partners. First, because we are not the super supremo, and secondly, it works really better if we're able to shape these standards and regulations together to work on the implications. And I think in that regard, we have to look at the basket of instruments which we have. And yes, the trade agreements were already mentioned. I'm happy that you brought it so forcefully. I couldn't do it better. But the EU-Mercosur agreement is really, I mean, if people don't understand the geostrategic value of it now, I don't know what else they need to understand this, the importance of this agreement. But so trade agreements, the European Commission has restarted a number of negotiations, also with Malaysia recently. We hope to conclude other agreements in the next couple of weeks, month. Mercosur, I think, will come into this phase of we have to do it now. We expect the Commission to bring this forward to the Council any moment, basically, and then it's a moment of truth for all of us, Europeans. But then we still should not forget about the Mercosur partners who also have to go through their processes, right? It's not only about us to come to an agreement, because there are also other countries who have to bring this forward. So that's one instrument. But also we have to look at other areas. The critical raw materials were already mentioned, where it took a while to understand, and I'm glad that you mentioned the industrial policy ambassador, which is an interest of every country now, rightfully so, that we have to think these supply chains differently. So what can we do? How can we bring added value to those countries? It's not getting out the cheap stuff and sending it back more expensive. It has to be an approach where both sides equally have benefit and added value. And I think in that regard, German business is ready, is invested to do so by bringing their duale Ausbildung, so their system of dual formation, the investment, but likewise, I would say now, also likewise learning from the tech sectors in those partner countries, because also there, I think global realities have changed. Technologies is not a one-way street, but great developments and ideas and people are everywhere. So I think in that regard, we have to rethink our instruments, but also, of course, structurally, and that was also mentioned on the long-term processes. What about global governance? What can we do to have better representation, to have a more inclusive approach on this? And this regard, the German government has supported, in particular, the G20 presidencies. Now, in a long row of global South countries, which is impactful. It matters who sets the agenda. Brazil has had a stellar performance as a G20 presidency. South Africa is now continuing with a broad agenda which reflects what we believe, which we have to do. And the G20 cannot do it alone. They can only give impetus and priorities which we have to take up in global institutions, because it's not the G20 who decide, right? Yeah. Same with the G7. I mean, the Chancellor was just at the summit in Canada, and there I think also on the second day, the important signal, it's not the G7 alone. It's G7 and beyond. So the number of host countries and countries who are included grow. The G7, G20 cooperation, they grow. What do we do with the OECD? How do we push forward World Bank, IMF reforms? So I think twofold approach. We have to work on our instruments, which have direct effect, trade agreements, partnerships, real partnerships on the critical raw materials front, technologies, but then also tackling the longer structural issues, where it needs a little bit longer to come to more advanced results.
Thank you very much. Before I open to the audience, I would like to ask you one question, and I switch on Chatham House for 10 seconds.
Will be difficult online, but yes.
What do you think? The EU-Mercosur will go through, will be reality or not, the trade agreement? Yes or no?
So I have been following the negotiations very closely since 5 years. But I would say, yes, I'm optimistic, great, but it will not go without some pain within the European Union. Yeah. Because we have to address the issues which the critics have in some way. And I'm not putting that on the shoulders of the Mercosur partners. We have to sort it out. What do we as Germany and other partners have to do to address concerns which are existing?
Thank you very much.
May I say something on that?
Sure.
Because I want to bring the Colombian optimism. And we are associated partner of the Mercosur, of course, and then we have a very strong relationship now in South America, not only political but economically as well. We are now finally looking more into the region, but I wanted to take from the comments that it is important to know that from the 33 countries of Latin America and the Caribbean, there's 25 with free trade agreements with the European Union. And that's very important because we are speaking of sometimes we get stuck sometimes in things. We know that very good in Latin America, but there's a broad set of options. And taking this opportunity, I want to invite the German government. I have done this the whole week, but now I need to do it again, and invite you all to look into concrete platforms where you can tackle this perception that is uneven, that we don't sit at the table. And there's two concrete options now for Germany and for Europe to sit together with Latin America and the Caribbean, which is number one, the EU CELAC Summit in Santa Marta, Colombia, on the 9th and the 10th of November. And I would like Aspen and every one of you to follow that, because there we are going to have very pragmatic approach. Colombia is the president of CELAC now, and we, the Latin American countries, has an agenda now to offer. We have been discussing with Brussels, and we want to go pragmatic and long-term, and we want to tackle competitiveness, trade, and all these topics that we are discussing here. And number two, the COP in Brazil, the COP30, why we got together to make sure that the dates are easy for people to travel. So right after this meeting in Colombia, we will have big discussions on the COP30 in Salvador de Pará. Pará.
Yeah.
In Brazil on the 11th and 12th
Yes, of November.
On November, right after. So I needed to do this because
Thank you.
it was an instruction.
So
Can I
please
also
go.
have
Good. Yeah, sure.
1 minute? Because I think I haven't heard anything, in terms of what we're discussing here about China.
Yeah, I
Right?
waited all the time for mentioning China.
I think, you heard me in terms of the regulatory requirements that are quite impossible to be met in terms of, the trading activity from the region to Europe. China does have some regulatory requirement. They are a way much easier to comply with.
Yeah.
A way much easier. So I think they're taking the opportunity. There's no vacuum in power, and there's no vacuum in trade.
Sure.
Right? If there's nobody there, doing the trade with these countries that have a lot to offer, somebody else is going to come and fill in the gap. And I think China is doing a good job in terms of, even the tariffs are smaller, for instance, to Brazil, to some minerals, than it is to the States. So it means that it's an incentive, that they want to trade with Brazil. And again, there are regulatory there, but not as stringent and not as rigid as the one we see coming from Europe. And again, as she said, COP is around the corner, very clear. We're having a lot of challenges with COP. If you open the papers, see there's no hotels. Belém do Pará, Belém is the city where the COP is going to take. It's a very small city with no infrastructure. So it's been really, really hard to receive everybody from the world and, and show that we are. The good thing about this thing in Belém, despite of the fact that we're not going to have very comfortable accommodations, that the Brazilian people are very nice. And food is also very good. So you're going to have some fun if you ever go there, if you're planning to do that. But don't expect very good accommodation because this is not going to be ready.
But good food, that's important.
Yes.
Now I would like to open the discussion to the audience. Please show up if you want to ask. And yeah, in the first row.
Thank you, Josef Hebeder, Academic Association for Security Studies. I have actually two questions, if I may. Your Excellency, I was wondering, and I thank you to bring up China. I was wondering how you perceive China as well as India and US treating you, and also what are your strategic priorities negotiating with them? And maybe Mr. Seemann, I was wondering concerning the Global Gateway Initiative by the EU, would you consider it an instrument that might foster economic governance? And concerning power, what is your assessment of this instrument? Is it also practical to somehow foster power or EU power in these regions as well, or is it not about that? Thank you.
Yeah, we will stay with those two questions there. And I will bring you also in on Chinese influence because you are very close by. And so, but let's start with the China-India question.
Yeah,
with you.
very quick. They are treating us very well, like other partners, like Germany in general. In Colombia, still, the US and the European Union together, the US is the largest partner for us. So we are speaking about, let's say, 30%. It's the only country. Colombia has a particularity. If you regard the rest of Latin America, we are an OECD partner. In Latin America, there's 4 OECD countries and others are having the accession process like Brazil. But we are an OECD country. We are the only, in Colombia, NATO associated partner, no other country of the region. So we have very strong ties, what means for security, for defense, because of the strategic location of Colombia. We are right there at the Panama Canal that is very well known. So, and we have, with Brazil together, we are the owners of the water fresh resources in the world. We are number 5 and 6, so that's very important as well for security in the world, because water is security as well. So with China, they have seen this, and then they are investing a lot. The biggest investment is in Chancay, in Peru, infrastructure. If you look into that's very important what you mentioned, infrastructure, China has a strategy in infrastructure and logistics with Latin America.
Yes.
And we are happy that we are discussing now with the European Union so that the European Union has more access to the access is there, but the way European companies are organized, they are not able to take part in our public businesses, etc. So there are some regulations, etc., that Europe needs to overcome to invest more. So in investment, China is very strong in the region, and it's becoming more and more stronger. They have a strategy, and if I give you a number, Latin America and the Caribbean, we need, according to the IDB, around 7.1 trillion US dollar for infrastructure, because we are growing. We have young population. We have Belém do Pará, where people are going to sleep in the boats very nicely, but they need more infrastructure. So our cities, we are demanding, we are in a dynamic, and we are growing. So India, the same. With Colombia, for example, India is investing a lot as well. We are exchanging a lot. And we want, as is the most important thing for any country, to diversify, to live in peace with all countries, to connect where the countries want to connect. We cannot connect in those parts where we don't want to connect. And I think that's the way I would answer your question, which is very complicated, but it's more or less the panorama. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I would like to stick with China, India before we go to the global gateway. Ira, your country is much closer to China than ours, of everyone else here. What do you think about the Chinese influence? Is this competition? Is it animosity? Whatever? Or what should be also our attitude be?
Yeah, so you are right. I think out of all the countries here, we are the closest, at least in distance, right, to China. So I think China and the region, Southeast Asia, it is complicated. Firstly, China has a territorial dispute, right, with several countries in ASEAN, including Malaysia in the South China Sea. Of course, Philippines is at the forefront of this. And, 4 US military bases there, it's not surprising. And of course, Taiwan and Hong Kong that are, of course, not in ASEAN, but really at the forefront of the Chinese geopolitical, geoeconomic tension. But as alluding to what I mentioned earlier, this is why understanding local context and history actually is very important. So I would actually like to cite from a survey, the State of Southeast Asia survey, which you all can find online. This is done by the ISIS Yusof Ishak Institute in Singapore, which is a really important think tank. So they do this State of Southeast Asia survey every year. You can find this online on their website. You can download it. And one of the key questions that they ask in this survey is about US and China. So as you can imagine, I have sat in many forums and panels that, what is Malaysia's stance on US and China? When it comes to it, is Malaysia going to pick a side? Surprise, surprise, no one wants to pick a side, between US and China. Firstly, because of just purely practical reasons. None of us can afford to pick between US and China. We want to do trade and do business with both countries. But why this survey is interesting is because, so when asked, so let me just see, the question is, when asked if ASEAN were forced to align itself between US and China, the results are always very close, right? So in 2024, the result was 51% chose China and 49% chose US. And in 2025, the result flipped a bit. So 52% chose US and then 48% chose China. And if you break down that result, it is even more interesting, right? So support for aligning with China is actually the strongest in Indonesia at 72%, Malaysia 71%, followed by Thailand 56%. And the alignment towards the US is strongest, unsurprisingly, in the Philippines, 86%, followed by Vietnam at 73.5%. So this is why understanding local context and history is so important. Alluding to what I said earlier about the US reputation really, really suffering in Malaysia and also Indonesia because of the conflict in Gaza, it's not surprising that Malaysia and Indonesia showed very high numbers for aligning to China. And Philippines and Vietnam, considering the history of both countries vis-a-vis the US, the continuing relationship between the US and the Philippines, it's not surprising that an overwhelming majority chose aligning with the US. So it is not so straightforward. This is what I'm saying. And again, no one wants to choose. There is no such thing as, choosing between US and China. I mentioned earlier, when the tariffs were announced during Liberation Day, yes, our politicians were shocked, oh no, what do we do? But the next day, phone call to America, right? Okay, can we come and negotiate? And then our trade minister has been in DC a couple of times already. So I think there needs to be a differentiation between how countries in Southeast Asia, in ASEAN, perceive China in terms of trade and doing business, and also other factors that affect reputation of countries in the region, such as conflicts in other places, that does make a difference. And I don't know, I really hope that there are scholars who would actually do some research about the correlation, right, between the negative perception of the US in the region and also like economic, economic implications of that. That would be really interesting to see. And I'll just end with one example that I've always thought has been really interesting to show how, conflicts that happen in other regions that are supported by certain countries actually has unintended consequences. So in Malaysia, part of how Malaysians express their protest over what's happening in Gaza is by boycotts, right? So the McDonald's boycott in Malaysia has been real. McDonald's, I think there have been branches of McDonald's that had to close down because no one's going there anymore. Funnily, but factually, the McDonald's franchise in Malaysia is owned by Saudi Arabia, right? It's nothing to do, it's not owned by America, the franchise in Malaysia. But that doesn't matter. McDonald's has issued several statements about this already, but that doesn't matter, right? The damage has been done. So this shows how perceptions and how people think about what's happening in these conflict zones really do make a difference, I would say, in the local context. And sometimes the facts don't matter, unfortunately. So I think I'll stop there.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We are running a little bit out of time. I got already the signs here. But Sami, about...
Maybe on China, I will offer
on China, yes.
Arab world perspective. There is, the sentiment that Chinese model or the Chinese strategy was a smart one.
And always we hear China has a strategy and we do not. That's what you want.
Less patronizing, less conditionality, and more focused on improving the infrastructure and to fix the structural trade deficit with these countries, because they suffer. The trade deficit problem, and they don't have the means to act like the American administration is acting today. So this is one. Second, even these countries, and namely the Gulf countries, played it very smartly because they are leveraging their relationship with China in order to fix the strategic imbalance with the West. Look at countries like Saudi Arabia, like Emirates, United Emirates, who are today part of the BRICS.
Yes.
While they are #1 partners, and because of that, maybe their relationship with Washington has substantially improved. So we need to take this into consideration, and the fact, always coming back to the perception that I heard it a lot, and I fully understand that strength and collaboration between democracy. This is very good as a first step. But guess what? 60% of the world population live under authoritarian rule. And the democracy wave is receding. So meanwhile, what to do? I mean, this is where you need to engage with non-democratic countries and putting in place the strategy based on common interest, starting with issues like climate change, like artificial intelligence, like new technologies.
Thank you very much. No, Mr. Seemann, like always, the West has the last word.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Just joking,
I'll be quick, but I'll be quick, and I think it really adds or connects well to what you have said, and also some of you in the end. Exactly, it has to be based on common interest, and I think that's the answer to Global Gateway. So yes, it's part of the instruments which we want to continue. It took a while to put it on the rail, but I think now we're in a better position. Commission is in a better position. Member states how to push that forward. Member state partner countries know of the instrument now. It took a while to know that it's there, and I think the advantage is it's concrete, it's project based, and that's I think something which we want to continue. And I think it's not the question if it's about European power or not. It's about, is it in EU interest? Yes. Is it in the mutual interest of the EU and partner country? Yes, then we can move forward. Otherwise, if it's only in the EU interest, it will not take off.
Thank you very much. I think there are more questions open now than before our panel. It was very interesting, very challenging, very, very good. And we have not enough time, like always, but I would like to thank you to all panelists. But very much, it was very interesting. And you have the opportunity to talk with everyone around here over the next 2 hours still. And thank you very much for Aspen for organizing it. And I hand back to Stormy now.
Yeah, and we would love to have a group picture.
Okay.
So that as well.
Okay.
So don't run away yet. Give them a big applause. Also for the moderation. And while they take the group picture, we are going to have another coffee break.